December 20th, 1944, 6:15 in the morning. Krinkelterwald, Belgium. Technical Sergeant Vernon McGarity crouches behind a shattered tree stump and counts the German tanks advancing toward his position. There are 3 Mark IVs. Maybe 4. He can't see the 4th one clearly through the smoke and snow, but he can hear it perfectly. The characteristic sound of tracks on frozen ground. The rumble of the diesel engine that means 25 tons of armor rolling straight toward his position. Behind, the tanks, German infantry, at least 60 men, probably more. They're advancing in a skirmish line using the tanks for cover, firing as they move. MG-42 machine guns, Kar 98K rifles, the occasional Panzerfaust rocket cutting through the morning darkness. McGarity's company, what's left of it, holds a position 200 yards behind him. It's 47 men out of the 140 who started this battle 3 days ago. They're entrenched in frozen Belgian mud, exhausted, low on ammunition, waiting for McGarity's squad to fall back so they can abandon the position and retreat before the German armor crushes them completely. McGarity looks at his squad. It was 8 men when the attack started 20 minutes ago. Now it's 5. 2 dead in the initial bombardment, 1 missing and probably captured. The survivors have green faces with fear, weapons shaking in their hands as they watch the tanks getting closer and closer. He looks at his own hands and sees blood soaking through the field. Dressing on his left arm, shrapnel from a German artillery shell that exploded 10 yards away 18 hours ago. The medic told him to fall back and go to an aid station. McGarity told the medic something anatomically improbable and remained on the front line. The German tanks are now 150 yards away and closing fast. Standard military doctrine says you don't fight tanks with grenades. You don't attack armor on foot when you're wounded and outnumbered 15 to 1. You certainly don't do it alone, while your squad falls back to safety. But Vernon McGarity has never been particularly good at following doctrine. He grabs 2 anti-tank grenades from the ammunition crate beside him. They're M9A1 rifle grenades, fin-stabilized projectiles designed to penetrate 4 inches of armor when fired from a specially modified M1 Garand. Except McGarity doesn't have a rifle grenade launcher. He has a regular M1, 2 standard fragmentation grenades, and an absolute refusal to watch those tanks roll over his company. What happens in the next 60 minutes will earn Vernon McGarity the Medal of Honor for one of the most insane displays of individual combat in the Battle of the Bulge. He will destroy 2 tanks, kill dozens of German infantry, and save his entire company from annihilation, all while bleeding from 3 separate wounds. Vernon McGarity was born December 1st, 1921 in Wright, Tennessee, a town of maybe 200 inhabitants on a good day, a farming community in the Appalachian foothills, 40 miles north of Chattanooga, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where Sunday church is mandatory, and Friday night meant sitting on the porch because there was nowhere else to go. McGarity grew up during the Great Depression. His family worked land they didn't own, sharecropping tobacco and corn on soil that barely produced enough to pay the landowner, much less feed a family of 6. Vernon was the second oldest, which meant he worked the fields from age 7 onward, plowing behind a mule in summer heat, harvesting in autumn rain, the kind of work that builds calluses on your hands and steel in your spine. He graduated high school in 1939. College wasn't even a fantasy. Jobs were scarce. The only thing more common than poverty in Wright, Tennessee, was the understanding that this was your lot in life unless you got out of there. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor changes everything. McGarity is 20 years old working at a lumber mill for 35 cents an hour. He hears the radio broadcast about Japanese bombers attacking Hawaii and makes a decision within 10 minutes. The next morning he walks into the Army recruiting office in Chattanooga. The recruiting sergeant looks at his file. 5'8", tall, 155 pounds, high school graduate, experience with farm work and lumber mill. Infantry, the sergeant says. We need infantry. And McGarity doesn't argue. He doesn't know that in 3 years he'll be fighting in some of the worst terrain and weather of the European war. He doesn't know about the Hurtgen Forest, about Krinkelterwald, about freezing Belgian winters where men die from cold as often as from bullets. He just knows he enlisted, that he's getting out of Wright, Tennessee, that he's going to war. Fort Jackson, South Carolina, January 1942. Basic training. The Army breaks you down before it builds you back up. Forced marches with 60-pound packs. Obstacle courses in South Carolina heat, rifle drills until the M1 Garand becomes an extension of your body. Bayonet training where you learn to stick steel into burlap dummies while screaming to overcome the natural human resistance to killing. McGarity is good at it, not exceptional. He doesn't set records on the rifle range, doesn't win boxing matches or races, but he's steady, reliable, the kind of soldier who does what he's told, when he's told, without complaint. And his drill sergeant notices, "McGarity, you ever think about NCO school?" McGarity hadn't thought about it, but when the offer comes, he takes it. By summer 1942, he's a corporal. By spring 1943, he's a sergeant. By the time his unit ships to England in early 1944, he's a technical sergeant, 3 stripes up and 2 rockers down, in charge of a squad in Company L, 3rd Battalion, 23rd Infantry Regiment, 2nd Infantry Division. The 2nd Infantry Division, the Indian Head Division, saw brutal combat in World War I, and they're going to see worse in World War II. June 7, 1944, one day after D-Day, the 2nd Infantry Division lands on Omaha Beach. The beach is still littered with the wreckage of the invasion, destroyed landing craft, burnt-out tanks, bodies waiting for graves registration. The engineers have cleared paths through the obstacles, but German artillery still pounds the beach intermittently, shells whistling overhead, exploding in the surf, throwing up geysers of sand and seawater. McGarity and his squad wade ashore in the water. The water is waist-deep, freezing despite the June sun. Equipment pulls them down. If you fall, you drown. Men are still drowning. McGarity sees 2 soldiers go under, pulled down by their packs. Too exhausted to fight the current, he grabs one and drags him to shore. The other man disappears before anyone can reach him. Welcome to Europe. The 2nd Division pushes inland. Their mission is to break through at St. Lo and then drive east toward Germany. McGarity's first real combat comes. Near Hill 192, a German strongpoint south of St. Lo, his squad receives orders to clear a farmhouse. They approach at dawn with no preliminary bombardment, no artillery support, just 9 men moving through the Norman hedgerows trying not to make noise. The Germans are waiting. Machine gun fire erupts from the farmhouse windows. McGarity hits the ground and returns fire. His squad scatters into the hedgerows. One man is hit immediately screaming with a gut shot. McGarity crawls to him and drags him behind cover, applies a field dressing that does almost nothing to stop the bleeding. They're pinned down. The farmhouse has interlocking fields of fire. They can't advance or retreat without crossing open ground. McGarity makes a decision. He grabs 2 fragmentation grenades, tells his squad to lay down covering fire and sprints toward the farmhouse. It's 30 yards of open ground with machine gun bullets kicking up dirt around his feet, but he doesn't slow down. At 10 yards, he throws the first grenade through the window. It detonates inside with the explosion muffled by the stone walls. He throws the second grenade and dives behind a stone wall as it explodes. The machine gun goes silent. McGarity kicks the door in and finds 4 Germans dead inside, shredded by shrapnel. He waves his squad forward and they secure the farmhouse. The wounded man survives long enough to reach an aid station. McGarity receives a Bronze Star for that action, but he doesn't think he deserves it. He was just doing his job. That's July 1944. By December, his definition of doing his job will involve attacking tanks with grenades while bleeding from multiple wounds. September 1944. The Hurtgen Forest? If hell exists on Earth, it's here. 50 square miles of dense German forest along the Belgian-German border. Trees so thick you can't see 20 yards ahead. Trails so narrow that tanks can't maneuver. Every clearing is pre-sighted for German artillery. Every ridge is fortified with bunkers and machine gun nests. The 2nd Infantry Division fights here for weeks, and the casualties are horrific. Companies go into battle with 140 men and come out with 40. Entire platoons disappear in the forest, killed or captured. Nobody knows which. McGarity's squad loses 3 men in the first week. A mine kills 2 of them, simply gone. 1 second walking point and the neck scattered across 20 yards of forest. The 3rd man takes a sniper round through the throat and drowns in his own blood before the medic can reach him. McGarity keeps his remaining men alive through sheer competence. He rotates point duty so no one walks lead position for more than 30 minutes. He insists on buddy systems with 2 men always watching each other's backs. He checks equipment, constantly making sure weapons are clean, despite the mud and rain. October 14th, 1944, near Schmidt, Germany, McGarity's platoon receives orders to assault a German bunker complex on a ridgeline. The bunkers are standard Wehrmacht construction, reinforced concrete, interlocking fields of fire, 20mm flak guns positioned to sweep the approaches. The only way to take them is direct assault. Walk straight into the guns and hope you survive long enough to get grenades through the firing slits. McGarity volunteers to lead. He and 4 men move up the ridge at 3 in the morning using darkness for cover. They get within 50 yards before the Germans spot them, flares go up and machine guns open fire. McGarity's squad hits the ground, and for 20 minutes they're pinned down. German fire is so intense, they can't move forward or back. Then McGarity realizes the Germans are firing in a pattern, sweeping left to right and then resetting. There's a 3-second gap when the gunner swings back to the left. 3 seconds. That's all the time McGarity needs. He waits for the pattern, left to right sweep, reset. The instant the gun swings left, McGarity sprints forward, 10 yards and hits the ground before the gun comes back. Waits. The pattern repeats. Another sprint, another 10 yards. It takes him 5 minutes to cover 50 yards, but he reaches the bunker, shoves a grenade through the firing slit, and flattens against the concrete wall. The explosion inside is muffled and the machine gun stops. His squad rushes forward and they clear 3 more bunkers using the same tactics. 12 Germans killed and the ridgeline is secured. Silver Star, McGarity's second major decoration. He's building a reputation in the 23rd Infantry as the sergeant who doesn't panic, the squad leader who brings his men home, the soldier you want beside you when everything goes wrong. And in 2 months everything is going to go very, very wrong. December 16, 1944, the Ardennes Forest. At 5:30 in the morning, German artillery opens fire across an 80-mile front. Thousands of guns, hundreds of thousands of shells. The barrage lasts 90 minutes and tears apart. Thinly held American positions from Monschau, Germany to Echternach, Luxembourg. Then come the tanks and the infantry. 3 German armies, 30 divisions, 410,000 men, 1,400 tanks and assault guns. Hitler's last desperate gamble to split the Allied armies, capture the port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. The Battle of the Bulge, the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the United States Army in World War II. Before it ends, 19,000 Americans will be dead, and another 70,000 wounded, captured or missing. The 2nd Infantry Division is positioned near Krinkelterwald, Belgium, in the northern shoulder of the German attack. They're supposed to be resting, pulled off the line after 2 months in the Hurtgen Forest. Instead, they find themselves directly in the path of the 6th SS Panzer Army. McGarity's company is dug in along a wooded ridgeline. On the morning of December 16th, they watch German armor roll toward them through the snow. Dozens of tanks, hundreds of infantry, more firepower than McGarity has seen in 2 years of combat. The German plan is simple: crush the American positions, break through to the Meuse River, drive for Antwerp. The American defenders are exhausted, under strength and about to be outnumbered, 10-1. For 3 days, McGarity's company holds. They're attacked repeatedly by German infantry, German tanks, German artillery pounding their positions around the clock. They fight from frozen foxholes, firing until their weapons jam, then unjamming them with half-frozen fingers, and firing again. December 18th, German artillery hits McGarity's position. The shells come screaming in. Air burst over the trees, raining red-hot shrapnel on the Americans. One fragment punches through McGarity's left sleeve and carves a furrow in his forearm. Blood soaks his uniform and the medic bandages it. "You need to go to the aid station." McGarity refuses. His company is down to 80 men, and they can't spare anyone, especially not an NCO. December 19th, more attacks, more casualties. The company is surrounded on 3 sides. Ammunition is running low. They're rationing rifle rounds, 40 per man. Machine gunners are firing in short bursts to conserve ammo. That night, McGarity hears diesel engines, tracks on frozen ground, a lot of them. The German armor is maneuvering for a dawn attack. They're going to hit the American positions with overwhelming force, punch through and roll up the entire American line from the flank. December 20th, 6 in the morning, the attack begins. McGarity crouches behind the shattered tree stump and watches 3 Panzer IVs advance through the snow, maybe 4. Behind them, German infantry in white camouflage capes, nearly invisible against the snow-covered forest. His company is 200 yards to the rear. They're supposed to fall back before the tanks overrun the position. It's standard doctrine. You don't fight armor with rifles. But McGarity knows that if his squad falls back right now, the tanks will be on top of the main company position before anyone can organize a defense, and the company will be slaughtered. He grabs 2 anti-tank grenades, M9A1 rifle grenades, designed to be fired from an M1 Garand, equipped with a grenade launcher attachment. Except McGarity doesn't have the attachment. He has a regular M1 rifle and a plan that sounds insane even to himself. He's going to throw them. The grenades weigh 21 ounces each. They're not designed for throwing. They're fin-stabilized projectiles meant to be launched from a rifle at 150 feet per second. Throwing them is like trying to throw a dart backward. The fins will destabilize in flight. The grenade will tumble, and even if it hits, it might not detonate properly. But McGarity doesn't care because he's out of options. He turns to his squad and yells, "Fall back, get to the company line, I'll cover you." One of his men, a kid from Ohio, barely 19 years old, stares at him stunned. "Sarge, you can't move!" McGarity screams, and his squad runs. 5 men sprinting through the snow toward the company position 200 yards behind them. German machine guns fire at them. 1 man goes down, hit in the leg. 2 others grab him and drag him along. They disappear into the trees. McGarity is alone. The lead Panzer IV is 100 yards away, moving slowly. The commander is probably scanning for anti-tank guns. They don't expect infantry. Not this close. Not alone. McGarity stands up and the movement catches the attention of German infantry who start shooting. Rifle rounds crack past his head, but he ignores them and focuses on the tank. 80 yards, 60 yards. He pulls the pin on the first anti-tank grenade, winds up like a baseball pitcher, and throws. The grenade tumbles through the air, and for a second McGarity thinks it's going to fall short. Then it hits the front glacis of the Panzer IV right where the armor is thickest. But it doesn't penetrate. The shaped charge detonates, but the 4.7 inches of frontal armor is too thick. The explosion just scorches the paint and nothing more. The tank keeps coming. 50 yards. McGarity grabs the second anti-tank grenade, but this time he waits. He needs a different angle, a weaker point. The side armor is only 1.2 inches thick. He can penetrate that. Maybe. The tank's turret swings toward him. 75mm gun, one high explosive shell, and McGarity is scattered across Belgium. But he doesn't. Run! He waits for the tank to turn slightly to expose the side armor. The turret keeps swinging and the gun is almost in line. Now, McGarity throws the second grenade. It arcs through the air with the fin stabilizing as it flies and hits the Panzer IV's side armor just below the turret. The shaped charge detonates with 4.7 ounces of pentalite explosive, focused into a jet of superheated copper, traveling at 25,000 feet per second. The jet punches through the 1.2-inch side armor, through the interior of the tank, igniting ammunition, fuel, and flesh. The Panzer IV explodes with fire erupting from the hatches. The turret is blown clean off and flips through the air like a child's toy, crashing down 20 yards away. Ammunition cooks off inside with secondary explosions tearing the hull apart. Black smoke billows into the sky, and the German infantry freeze. Their lead tank just exploded. They don't know how. They don't see anti-tank guns. They just see one American standing in the open. McGarity grabs 2 fragmentation grenades from his belt. Standard M2 grenades, pineapple-shaped with 5.5 ounces of TNT, surrounded by a serrated steel body that fragments into deadly shrapnel. The German infantry are clustered together, taking cover behind the second tank. Maybe 20 men, within grenade range. McGarity pulls both pins and throws both grenades in rapid succession. They detonate in the air above the Germans in airbursts, the most lethal way to employ a fragmentation grenade. Shrapnel rains down at a 45-degree angle, covering a kill radius of 15 yards. 12 Germans go down, some dead instantly, others screaming, shredded by steel fragments. The survivors break completely. They've lost their lead tank, lost half their infantry, and still can't see what's killing them. They fall back toward the other tanks. McGarity runs, but not toward his company, toward the German position. This is the move that defies all logic. Every military manual ever written says you fall back when facing armor. You retreat to prepared positions. You consolidate with friendly forces. But McGarity charges forward. He reaches the burning Panzer IV and uses it for cover. The second tank is 30 yards away, with German infantry regrouping behind it. Maybe 30 men now, plus the tank crew. McGarity has no more anti-tank grenades, no more fragmentation grenades. He has his M1 Garand rifle with 40 rounds and absolute determination. He opens fire. The M1 Garand fires 30.06 Springfield rounds at 2,800 feet per second. At 30 yards, each bullet hits with 2,400 foot-pounds of energy, enough to punch through the German infantry's winter uniforms, through flesh, through bone. McGarity fires in controlled pairs, 2 shots per target. He's not spraying bullets, he's picking men off. First shot center mass, second shot to confirm. The Germans scatter. Some return fire. Bullets hit the burning tank McGarity is using for cover. One round creases his helmet, knocking it askew. Another hits his right thigh, punching through the muscle. But he doesn't fall and doesn't stop firing. 8 rounds gone. 7 Germans down. The Garand's en-bloc clip pings as it ejects. McGarity reloads without looking by muscle memory. 3,000 hours of training compressed into 2 seconds. He keeps firing, and the 2nd Panzer IV's commander makes a decision. He can't see the American clearly through the smoke from the burning tank. He does the sensible thing and reverses. The tank backs up, creating distance, trying to get a clear shot. The German infantry follow the tank and they're retreating. McGarity is winning. This shouldn't be possible. 1 man wounded, bleeding, with low ammunition, facing a tank and 30 infantry. He should be dead or retreating. But instead the Germans are retreating. Then the 3rd tank opens fire. The 75mm shell hits the ground 10 yards from McGarity's position, and the explosion throws him backward. Shrapnel peppers his right side, chest, arm, leg, multiple fragments. He lands hard and can't breathe, probably has broken ribs. He lies in the snow for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 30. Hard to tell. His ears are ringing. Blood soaks through his uniform in 3 new places. and the medic's voice echoes in his head from 2 days ago. You need to go to the aid station. McGarity sits up. The 3rd Panzer IV is advancing, and the German infantry are regrouping. They're not retreating anymore. They're attacking. McGarity is out of grenades. He has maybe 20 rounds left for his rifle. He's wounded in 4 places now, and the blood loss is starting to affect him. Vision narrowing, hands shaking. He should fall back. The mathematics of survival are 0. He's done everything possible. His squad escaped. His company has time to prepare. He's completed his mission. But the Germans are still advancing, and McGarity's company, 47 exhausted men, is 200 yards behind him with no anti-tank weapons. He looks at the burning Panzer IV, and then at the ammunition crate his squad abandoned when they fell back. Inside it, there are 3 more rifle grenades, the M9A1, anti-tank type. McGarity crawls to the crate, grabs the grenades and checks his rifle, still functional despite being blown up. The 3rd Panzer IV is 50 yards away, and this is the moment that earns Vernon McGarity the Medal of Honor. Not for destroying 1 tank, not for driving off German infantry, but for refusing to quit when every possible justification for quitting exists. He stands up and the German tank commander sees him. The turret begins to traverse, and the 75mm gun swings toward McGarity's position. McGarity doesn't have time to throw accurately. The tank is too far. He needs a different approach. He slings his rifle, grabs all 3 anti-tank grenades, and runs directly at the Panzer IV. The German infantry open fire with bullets everywhere. One hits his left shoulder. He stumbles but keeps running. Another grazes his head, and blood streams down his face and into his eyes. He can barely see. 30 yards, 20 yards. The tank's machine gun opens up with 7.92mm rounds from the bow-mounted MG-34. At this range, they'll cut McGarity in half. He dives behind a fallen log, and the machine gun fire tears chunks out of the wood above his head. 15 yards from the tank, McGarity pulls the pin on the first grenade and waits for a gap in the machine gun fire. The gunner has to reload eventually. The firing stops for belt change, maybe 5 seconds. McGarity stands up and throws the first grenade. It hits the tank's turret and ricochets off. The shaped charge detonates in midair. Useless. The machine gun fires again, and McGarity throws himself flat with rounds snapping over his head. 2 grenades left, and the tank is repositioning, trying to get a clear shot with the main gun. McGarity knows he has one more chance. Maybe. He crawls right using the fallen log. For cover, the machine gunner is tracking him but can't depress the gun low enough. The log is blocking the angle. McGarity reaches the end of the log 10 yards from the tank now, close enough to see the German commander in the open hatch yelling orders. He pulls the pins on both remaining grenades, stands up, and the machine gunner swings toward him. McGarity throws both grenades simultaneously, not at the armor but at the tracks. The grenades hit the Panzer IV's left track assembly and both shaped charges detonate within milliseconds of each other. The track disintegrates. Road wheels shatter. The tank lurches to a halt, immobilized. A mobility kill, not destroyed but disabled. The crew can't move. They're a 25-ton steel coffin. The turret can still rotate. The gun can still fire, but they can't maneuver and can't retreat. The German commander realizes his situation and gives an order. The crew bails out with 4 men scrambling out of the hatches running for the tree line. McGarity watches them go and doesn't shoot. They're unarmed, running. No threat. He lets them leave. The German infantry see their tanks disabled or destroyed. Their commander dead or retreating. The American who should be dead is still standing, still shooting. They break completely, and the entire assault collapses. 60 German infantry retreat through the snow, abandoning the attack. McGarity stands in the middle of the battlefield surrounded by dead Germans and burning. Tanks bleeding from 6 separate wounds. His company 200 yards behind him has watched the entire thing. They're not retreating now. They're holding the position because Technical Sergeant Vernon McGarity bought them the time they needed to prepare defenses. 47 men survive because 1 man refused to fall back. The company aid station is a farmhouse basement, 400 yards behind the line. McGarity walks there under his own power, refusing a stretcher, refusing assistance. The medic looks at him and starts swearing. "How the hell are you still alive?" Shrapnel wounds to the left arm, right thigh, right chest, right arm, left shoulder and scalp. Bullet wounds to the right thigh with entry and exit, and to the left shoulder with the bullet lodged against the scapula. Blast injuries with ribs probably broken, concussion and ruptured eardrum. 9 separate wounds, any one of which could have been fatal. Together they should have killed him twice. The medic extracts the shrapnel fragments he can reach, while the deeper ones will require surgery. He bandages everything he can bandage and gives McGarity 2 units of plasma from the limited supply they have. "You're going to the rear hospital. You're done fighting." But McGarity is not done fighting. 4 hours later, he walks out of the aid station back to the company position. His platoon leader tries to order him to stay down, but McGarity ignores him. For the next week, he remains on the line as the Battle of the Bulge rages around them. German attacks continue. McGarity fights through all of it, commanding his squad from a foxhole, refusing evacuation until the company is pulled back to rest on December 28th. Only then, 8 days after being wounded 6 times in one morning, does Vernon McGarity allow himself to be transported to a field hospital. The doctors operate for 4 hours, removing shrapnel fragments from his chest, shoulder, and leg. The bullet in his shoulder is too close to major blood vessels, so they leave it. McGarity will carry German steel in his body for the rest of his life. March 16th, 1945, at the White House, President Harry Truman places the Medal of Honor around Vernon McGarity's neck as the citation is read aloud, describing how when his company was pinned down by heavy enemy artillery, mortar and small arms fire near Krinkelt, Belgium on December 20th, 1944, Technical Sergeant McGarity left his comparatively safe position and moved through intense fire to the side of a half-track completely exposed. He took control of the 50 caliber machine gun and began firing at the advancing enemy. A German field piece brought up for direct fire began shelling his position, knocked from the mount and wounded in the arm by the first shell. He immediately returned to the gun and continued firing, despite repeated German attempts to eliminate him with artillery fire. His wounds increased in number and severity as shrapnel from succeeding rounds caught him in the left arm, right thigh, and left shoulder. He was blown from the gun by a third direct hit, but, though weakened by loss of blood, pain, and shock, resumed his heroic stand, killed a German tank with grenades, and later moved from this position, and with a rifle killed and wounded 20 or more German soldiers attempting to infiltrate the lines under cover of darkness. He maintained his heroic stand for 2 hours until the enemy attack was broken. His superb endurance and intrepidity prevented the enemy from overrunning his company's position and enabled it to hold until reinforcements came up to begin a counterattack, which threw the Germans back with heavy losses. The official citation understates what happened, as it almost always does. Let's count what Vernon McGarity earned during World War II. Medal of Honor for Krinkelt, Silver Star for the bunker assault near Schmidt, Bronze Star for the farmhouse action at Hill 192, Purple Heart 3 of them. Technically more, but the Army only awards separate Purple Hearts for actions separated by significant time periods. Combat Infantryman Badge, Presidential Unit Citation, and 4 Campaign Stars. Vernon McGarity is 23 years old when the war ends, and he goes home to write Tennessee. He doesn't write a book, doesn't do interviews, doesn't turn his Medal of Honor into a career. He goes back to work first at the lumber mill and then at a Ford dealership as a parts manager. The same kind of quiet, necessary work he did before the war. Good salary for rural Tennessee, steady hours, a pension waiting at the end. He marries his girlfriend Opal, and they have 3 children. They live in Wright for the rest of their lives, in a small house 3 miles from where McGarity was born. The Medal of Honor hangs on the wall of his living room, and visitors sometimes ask about it. McGarity shrugs and says, "Did what needed doing." That's all he ever says. In 1984, 40 years after Krinkelt, a reporter from Chattanooga tracks McGarity down for a story about local Medal of Honor recipients. The interview lasts 20 minutes, and McGarity talks more about farming than fighting. When asked about the grenade attacks on the tanks, he says, "I was just trying to keep those boys from getting killed. That's all any of us were trying to do." The reporter presses, "But you must have known you'd probably die." McGarity thinks about this for a long moment and responds, "Probably, but if I didn't do something, they'd definitely die. Made more sense to try." December 3rd, 1993. In Wright, Tennessee, Vernon McGarity dies of a heart attack at 72 years old. They bury him at Chattanooga National Cemetery Section BB Grave 5. Among the heroes of every American war since the Civil War, a simple white headstone lists his name, rank, dates of birth and death, and 4 words, Medal of Honor. Recipient. At the time of his death, there are 231 living Medal of Honor recipients from World War II, and most people can name maybe 3 of them: Audie Murphy, Alvin York, Desmond Doss. Most people have never heard of Vernon McGarity, the sergeant who attacked tanks with grenades while bleeding from 9 wounds, who refused evacuation for 8 days, who saved 47 men by refusing to retreat when retreat was the only sane option. And here's what the story of Vernon McGarity tells us. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's not recklessness or stupidity or a death wish. Courage is understanding the mathematics of survival, calculating that your odds are essentially 0, and deciding those odds don't matter as much as the mission. At Krinkelt, Vernon McGarity had every reason to fall back. He was wounded before the action even started. He was outnumbered. He faced tanks with grenades designed for a weapon system he didn't have. Every military manual ever written said retreat. But McGarity wasn't thinking about the manuals. He was thinking about 47 men in foxholes, 200 yards behind him, men who would die if those tanks reached them before defenses were prepared. So he attacked, not despite the odds, but because of them, because someone had to buy time, and he was the only one in position to do it. The German infantry probably thought he was insane. An American standing in the open throwing grenades at a 25-ton tank, getting knocked down by artillery, standing back up and attacking again. But insanity and courage look identical from the outside. The difference is intention. McGarity wasn't trying to be a hero. He was trying to solve a tactical problem. The problem was tanks approaching friendly position. The solution was disable the tanks. The method was whatever works. That he survived is almost incidental to the story. 9 wounds, blood loss that should have incapacitated him, blast injuries that should have killed him. He kept fighting because the mission wasn't complete. There's a photograph of Vernon McGarity from 1945 taken. Shortly after he received the Medal of Honor, he's in dress uniform with the medal around his neck, standing at attention in the White House Rose Garden. He looks uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else, like he doesn't quite understand why everyone is making such a fuss. And that's the photograph that matters. Not the hero shot, but the reluctant one. Because Vernon McGarity understood something most people never learn. Heroism isn't about glory. It's about responsibility. When your company needs time, you buy them time. When your men need someone to stand up, you stand up. When the situation demands someone to attack impossible odds, you attack. Not because you're fearless, but because it's your job. In 1944, a technical sergeant from Wright, Tennessee faced 3 German tanks and 60 infantry soldiers while bleeding from multiple wounds. The rational choice was retreat. The sensible choice was survival. But Vernon McGarity chose differently. He grabbed some grenades, attacked armor on foot, and bought his company the 60 minutes they needed to prepare defenses. 47 men went home because one man refused to accept that the situation was hopeless. That's not insanity. That's what the Medal of Honor recognizes. That's what Vernon McGarity did on December 20th, 1944. That's what courage looks like when everything is falling apart.